My girlfriend scoffed. Stop being so needy. I'll talk to you whenever I feel like it, while out partying with her friends. I simply replied, as you wish, muted her entirely, and spent the next 4 weeks completely ignoring her existence until she showed up at my door, sobbing, begging for the attention she had so carelessly thrown away. I am a 29-year-old guy working as a cybersecurity analyst in Chicago, and up until about a month ago, I genuinely believed I was in the healthiest, most secure relationship of my entire life. My girlfriend, who I'll call Chloe, 28 female, and I had been together for exactly 2.5 years. We didn't live together. She had a beautiful loft in the West Loop, and I rented a modest apartment up in Lincoln Park, but our lives were deeply intertwined. We texted constantly, and it never felt forced. It was just our rhythm. I'd wake up to a good morning message, we'd do quick check-ins during our lunch breaks, and we always ended the day with a good night call, even if it was just for 5 minutes to hear each other's voices. It felt normal. It felt incredibly right. We were planning a future together. We had spent the last 2 Thanksgivings with her family in Ohio. We were looking at joint savings accounts, and there were serious talks about moving into a condo together once both of our leases were up next spring, until everything just stopped feeling right. The problem didn't start with a massive blowout argument or some huge betrayal. It started incredibly subtly, right around our 2-year mark. Chloe began leaving me on read for hours at a time, sometimes for entire days. At first, when I would gently bring it up, she would just laugh it off with a breezy wave of her hand. "I'm just swamped, babe. You know how the marketing agency gets at the end of the quarter," she'd say. Fair enough, I thought. Her job was demanding, and I wanted to be a supportive partner, so I backed off. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But then the pattern intensified, and the excuses started to blatantly contradict reality. She would claim she was too exhausted to look at her phone, yet she would simultaneously post endless Instagram stories. I'd be sitting at home, wondering if she was okay, only to open the app and see a barrage of updates. Bottomless brunches with her girlfriends at expensive River North restaurants, sweaty gym selfies with motivational quotes, and wild nights out holding espresso martinis with her friends laughing in the background. Meanwhile, my simple hope, "You're having a good day," text from 8 hours prior, was being blatantly ignored. I could literally see her active on WhatsApp, her last seen status updating every 3 to 4 minutes, but my messages would just sit there at the bottom of her screen with a single, mocking gray checkmark. I constantly gaslit myself. I told myself I was overthinking it. I told myself she had her own life, I had mine, and we were independent adults who didn't need to be joined at the hip, but the nagging, twisting feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. The inconsistency was driving me insane. I felt like I was being slowly phased out of her life, demoted from her primary partner to a background character she only interacted with when she had absolutely nothing better to do. The breaking point happened on a random Thursday evening. I had just finished a brutal 14-hour day debugging a massive security flaw for a difficult healthcare client. My eyes were burning from staring at lines of code, my head was pounding, and all I wanted was to hear my girlfriend's voice. I realized I hadn't heard a single word from her since Wednesday morning. So, I sent her a very simple, non-confrontational text. "Hey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you since yesterday morning. Is everything okay?" I set my phone down and went to take a shower. I made dinner. I watched an episode of a show. 3 full hours later, my phone finally buzzed. I eagerly picked it up, expecting an apology or a quick explanation. Instead, I read, "Jesus Christ, do you need a GPS tracker on me now?" I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, completely paralyzed. I was deeply confused and genuinely hurt. The message felt unnecessarily harsh, venomous even. I hadn't double-texted her. I hadn't called her 100 times. I had sent one single message in 36 hours. My heart rate spiked, and I decided to call her immediately to clear the air, thinking maybe her tone was just getting lost in text. She answered on the 5th ring, right before it went to voicemail. Instantly, I was hit with the loud thumping bass of club music and a chorus of drunken laughter in the background. "What?" Her voice barked through the speaker. It was flat, annoyed, and dripping with irritation, like I was a telemarketer who had just interrupted the most important moment of her life. I just wanted to make sure you were all right," I stammered, taken aback by her hostility. "You've been really distant lately." And that text was pretty aggressive. She sighed dramatically into the microphone, a long, exaggerated sound of pure exasperation. I heard her muffle the receiver and say something to someone else, probably her friend Jessica, followed by a burst of giggles. Then she came back to me. "Stop being so needy," she snapped, her words slurring just a tiny bit. "I'll talk to you whenever I feel like it. I don't owe you constant 24/7 updates on my life." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water to the chest. It wasn't just because the words themselves were mean, which they absolutely were, but because of how incredibly casually she delivered them. It was the tone of someone swatting away a pesky mosquito. She spoke to me like I was some annoying subscription service she couldn't be bothered to figure out how to cancel. Like 2.5 years of building a life together, of loving each other, meant absolutely nothing to her in the face of a fun Thursday night out. I felt a sudden, bizarre sense of absolute clarity wash over me. The anxiety that had been suffocating me for months instantly evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard numbness. I refused to give her the satisfaction of hearing my voice shake. I refused to beg for her respect. I kept my voice perfectly level, completely devoid of any emotion. "As you wish," I said simply. "Good. Finally. I'll call you when I have time," she retorted, and then she hung up on me. She didn't say goodbye. She just ended the call. I sat there on my living room couch, the phone still clutched in my hand, processing what had just transpired in the last 60 seconds. 2.5 years. 2.5 years of planning our lives, of supporting her through her career changes, of being her rock. And now, I was suddenly needy for wanting basic, foundational communication. I was a burden for simply wanting to know if the woman I loved was alive and well. I opened our chat thread. My thumb hovered over her contact name. I scrolled up through our extensive conversation history. I saw thousands of messages. I saw our inside jokes, the endless stream of red heart emojis, the Zillow links to apartments we wanted to tour, the grocery lists we shared. It was an entire digital museum of our love story. And then, I did something I had never, ever done in my entire life. I tapped her profile. I selected mute notifications. I set it to always. Then, I went into my phone's general settings, turned the ringer completely off, placed the phone screen down on my wooden coffee table, and walked away. If she wanted space, I decided right then and there, she was going to get all the space in the known universe. I was going to cut myself off from her completely. The first few days were significantly harder than I had anticipated. The withdrawal was physical. My brain had been wired to include her in every aspect of my daily routine. I'd instinctively reach for my phone while brewing my morning coffee. My muscle memory desperate to snap a photo of the sunrise over the Chicago skyline from my balcony to send to her. During my lunch breaks, I'd catch myself thinking of funny things to text her, a weird, convoluted bug in my cybersecurity code, or a stupid meme I saw on Reddit that perfectly matched her sense of humor. But every single time my hand twitched toward the phone, my brain would instantly replay the audio of her voice, dripping with absolute contempt. "Stop being so needy," and I'd slowly pull my hand back, leaving the phone untouched. By day 5, something profound shifted inside my brain. The urge to reach out completely died, and I started filling the massive void of time differently. I realized how much of my life I had put on hold just to be available for her whenever she graciously decided to grace me with her presence. I started going to the gym every single evening after work, something I'd been neglecting for the better part of a year. I'd put on my headphones, blast heavy metal, and lift weights until my muscles were too exhausted to feel sad. I called my older brother, Marcus, who I'd been meaning to catch up with for months but always put off because I was busy waiting around for Chloe's texts. Marcus and I talked for over 2 hours about everything and nothing: football, his new job, our parents. I spent an entire weekend deep cleaning my apartment. I tackled the overflowing hallway closet I'd been avoiding. I scrubbed the bathroom grout until it shined, and I finally went to Home Depot, bought the parts, and fixed the leaking kitchen faucet that had been driving me insane for weeks. With every task I completed, I felt lighter. I felt unburdened by the constant, suffocating anxiety of wondering when she'd respond, if she'd respond, or whether I had said something wrong to upset her. My phone remained completely silent. Not a single message from Chloe came through. By the end of week 1, I checked her Instagram out of a fleeting moment of morbid curiosity. She had posted a mirror selfie in her loft. She was in full glam makeup, wearing a tight black dress, looking absolutely stunning. The caption read, "Unbothered energy. followed by a story of her at a trendy rooftop bar with her friends, cocktails in hand. Everyone laughing uproariously at the camera. She looked genuinely happy. She looked relieved, even like a massive weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Seeing that was the final nail in the coffin for me. It completely killed whatever lingering hope I had that she was just having a bad night. I closed the app, deleted it from my home screen, and promised myself I wouldn't check it again. Week 2 and week 3 came and went in a hyper-focused blur. I volunteered to lead a new, massive project at work, a complete security infrastructure overhaul for a major financial firm. It was a brutal assignment that kept me at my desk until 8:00 or 9:00 p.m. most nights. But the work was challenging, deeply engaging, and it left me far too mentally exhausted to overthink my relationship status. I poured all the energy I used to spend worrying about Chloe into securing firewalls and running penetration tests. My colleague Sarah noticed the drastic change in my demeanor during a coffee break in the office kitchen. "You seem really different lately," she observed, stirring her oat milk latte and studying my face. "It's a good different. You seem way more focused. Less tense." "Just focusing on myself for a bit," I replied vaguely, taking a sip of my black coffee. "Relationship stuff?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I nodded slowly, not really wanting to trauma dump on a coworker. Sarah smiled knowingly, a sad sort of smile that told me she had been through something very similar. "Sometimes the trash takes itself out," she said softly. "You just have to be smart enough to not walk outside and bring it back in." I laughed out loud at that, but her words stuck with me for days. Was that exactly what was happening? Was Chloe showing me her true colors, and I was just finally paying attention instead of painting them over? All those red flags over the last 6 months, the flakiness, the dismissive attitude, the prioritizing of everyone else over me, I had explained them away. I had rationalized them. I had minimized my own needs to accommodate her selfish behavior. Maybe they were exactly what they appeared to be. By week 3, I genuinely, truly stopped thinking about her. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. The resentment had completely burned away, leaving nothing but apathy. I just existed in a peaceful space where she was no longer a factor in my daily emotional state. I started reading again, a hobby I had completely abandoned during our relationship because I used to spend my evenings staring at my phone, waiting for her texts. I finished 2 massive sci-fi novels in 1 week, staying up until 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday night because I simply couldn't put the second book down. I reconnected with old college friends. I went to a live jazz concert with my former roommate, David. I finally tried that new, highly rated Thai restaurant downtown that Chloe had always refused to go to because she didn't like the vibe. I was living my life entirely for myself, and it felt incredible. On day 28 of absolute silence, I was in my kitchen cooking dinner. I was making a traditional pasta carbonara, guanciale, pecorino romano, egg yolks, lots of black pepper, a recipe I had been determined to perfect. My phone, which I had taken off silent a week prior just in case work needed to reach me, suddenly started vibrating aggressively on the granite counter. I glanced at the caller ID. It was my brother, Marcus. "Hey man, what's up?" I answered, pinching some salt into the boiling pasta water. "Dude, is Chloe okay? Or are you okay?" Marcus asked, his voice laced with confusion. "She just sent me a really frantic DM on Instagram asking if you're all right." I froze. The wooden spoon in my hand stopped moving. "What did she say exactly?" "She asked if something terrible happened to you. She said you haven't responded to a single message from her in almost a month and she's worried sick." "I didn't even know you two were having issues. You didn't tell me you guys broke up." "We didn't officially break up," I said, stirring the pasta again. "She told me I was too needy and that she'd talk to me when she felt like it. So, I just stopped reaching out." I took her at her word. Marcus let out a loud bark of laughter. "Wait, seriously? And she's freaking out now? That is rich." Marcus had never been Chloe's biggest fan. He had always subtly hinted that he thought she was too self-absorbed and superficial, but he had kept his mouth shut out of respect for me. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I just told her that you're perfectly fine, you're alive, and that she should probably ask you herself." "Was that wrong? Should I have played along?" "No, that's perfect, actually." "Thanks, Marcus. I'll handle it." I hung up the phone, set my wooden spoon down on a paper towel, and finally opened my messages. I went to Chloe's muted conversation and opened it. 45 unread messages stared back at me. It was a fascinating study in human psychology, watching the progression of her texts over the 4-week span. They started out incredibly casual, right around day 10 of my silence. Day 10. Hey, you alive? Day 12. Did you get my messages? Hello? By day 15, the tone shifted to annoyance and entitlement. Day 15. Seriously, what is your problem? This is incredibly childish. You're acting like a literal child giving me the silent treatment. Day 18. I don't understand why you're being like this. Can you just text me back? By day 22, the anger morphed into genuine panic. Day 22. Why are you ignoring me? Please. Can we talk? I'm sorry if I upset you. Day 25. I'm getting really worried. This isn't funny anymore. Please tell me you're okay. Day 27. Please answer me, please. The most recent message had been sent just 40 minutes ago. Day 28. I'm coming over. We need to talk right now. This has gone on long enough. Reading through the desperate texts, I expected to feel a sense of vindication. I expected a rush of triumphant adrenaline. But I felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no lingering anger, no anxiety, no anticipation. Just a very mild, detached curiosity about what was going to happen next. It was exactly like watching the season finale of a TV show I was no longer emotionally invested in. I unmuted her contact, just in case she tried to call, but I didn't type a single letter in response. I put my phone back down and returned to my carbonara, carefully adjusting the heat and slowly adding the egg and cheese mixture to the pasta off the heat so it wouldn't scramble. I plated the food, poured myself a glass of red wine, and took my first bite. It was perfect. 20 minutes later, an aggressive, frantic knocking rattled my front door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was a desperate, urgent pounding that immediately made my next-door neighbor's dog start barking wildly. I took a sip of my wine, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and walked slowly down the hallway to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Chloe. But she looked nothing like the unbothered woman from her Instagram posts. Her normally perfect hair was a messy, tangled bird's nest, pulled into a hasty, lopsided bun with frizzy strands falling all around her face. She was wearing baggy gray sweatpants and an oversized, stained college hoodie clothes she had previously sworn she would never be caught dead wearing outside the house. She had absolutely zero makeup on, and her eyes were bloodshot, red, and swollen puffy from crying. She looked genuinely terrified. I took a deep, calming breath, unlocked the deadbolt, and opened the door. "Hey," I said, my voice completely flat and relaxed. She stared at me like she was looking at a literal ghost. Her mouth fell open slightly, her eyes darting up and down my body to confirm I was standing there in one piece. You're okay," she breathed out, her chest heaving. "Yeah," I replied, leaning casually against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "Why wouldn't I be?" She struggled for words, her hands gesturing helplessly in the air between us. "You haven't answered a single text in 4 weeks." 4 weeks! I thought something horrific happened to you. I thought you were dead, or in a coma, or in the hospital, or... "I'm perfectly fine," I said calmly, cutting off her rambling. "I've just been busy." Her face shifted from overwhelming relief to deep confusion, and then rapidly ignited into fiery anger. "Busy?" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the quiet hallway. "You were too busy to send one single text? One message to let me know you were alive? Do you have any idea what I've been going through? You said you'd talk to me whenever you felt like it." I replied smoothly, not raising my voice a single decibel. I respected that boundary. I stopped reaching out so you wouldn't feel smothered by my neediness. She physically stepped back, as if I had slapped her. "That's not. I didn't mean. You knew I didn't mean it like that. What didn't you mean?" I asked, keeping my tone entirely neutral, not hostile, just genuinely curious to see how she would spin this. "You seemed incredibly clear on the phone that night. You told me I was being needy for asking if you were okay. You explicitly stated you would talk to me when you felt like it. So, I simply waited for you to feel like it. I gave you the space you demanded." "Don't twist my words to make me the villain," she yelled, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm not twisting a single thing, Chloe. I am literally repeating, verbatim, what you said to me while you were laughing with your friends." She ran her trembling hands through her messy hair, pulling at the strands in frustration. "I didn't mean for you to ignore me completely. I didn't mean for you to just disappear like I don't even exist." "I didn't disappear," I corrected her softly. "I've been right here the entire time. I've been going to work, going to the gym, living my life. You just didn't notice I was gone until it affected you. Because I wasn't actively chasing you anymore. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The reality of my words seemed to finally penetrate her panic. The tears spilled over, streaming rapidly down her flushed cheeks. "You're punishing me," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "This is a sick, twisted punishment." "I'm not punishing you at all," I said, shaking my head. "Punishment requires malice. I don't have any malice toward you. I'm just giving you exactly what you asked for. The freedom to exist without my constant updates. You just haven't felt like talking to me much over the last month, I guess." "That's not fair," she cried out. "What's not fair?" I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave, becoming firmer. The apathy was slipping just a fraction, replaced by the cold, hard truth. What's not fair is telling someone who deeply cares about you that they're needy for wanting basic human communication. What's not fair is making me feel like I'm asking for the moon when I'm just asking for the absolute bare minimum of respect in a relationship. A text back. An acknowledgement that I exist in your world. She wiped her eyes roughly with the coarse sleeve of her hoodie, smearing her tears and snot across her face. "I was stressed," she pleaded. "Work was insane, the quarter was ending, and I felt suffocated by how much you always wanted to talk. I just needed to breathe." "Then you communicate that like an adult," I fired back, my eyes locking onto hers. "You say, 'Hey, I need some space for a few days because work is overwhelming and I need to decompress.' You don't mock me. You don't belittle me. You don't make me feel pathetic for caring about your well-being." "I know," she wailed, burying her face in her hands. "I know I should have. I'm sorry. But I didn't think you'd actually go ice cold like this. This isn't like you. You're the sweet one. You always forgive me." "Maybe I shouldn't have been," I said quietly. "Maybe I should have established boundaries a long time ago, instead of smiling and accepting whatever pathetic scraps of attention you decided to throw my way when you had nothing better to do." "Scraps?" she gasped, looking up at me in horror. "Is that really what you think our relationship was?" "That's exactly what it became, Chloe. Be honest with yourself for once. You talked to me when it was convenient for you, when you were bored, or when you wanted validation and an ego boost. But the absolute second I needed reassurance, the second I asked for basic consistency, I was suffocating you. I was a burden." She stared at me, her chest heaving, tears continuing to flow freely. "I didn't realize," she whispered. "I swear to God, I didn't know it felt like that for you." "You didn't ask," I stated simply. The words landed like a physical blow. She flinched violently, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "So, that's it?" Her voice broke into a fragile, raspy whisper. "We've been together for 2.5 years, and you're just done? You're throwing it all away over one phone call?" I leaned back, suddenly feeling immensely exhausted by her presence. "Are we over? Because from where I'm standing, we've been over for 4 weeks. You just didn't notice because you were too busy posting about your unbothered energy and drinking espresso martinis." She flinched again, her face turning pale. You saw that post." "I did," I confirmed. "And you know what? You looked genuinely happy. You looked incredibly relieved to not have to deal with me. So I let you have that happiness." I walked away. "I wasn't happy," she pleaded, stepping closer, reaching her hand out toward me. "It was just a front. It wasn't about you. It was exactly about me. And you know it. And that's fine. You're allowed to feel however you want to feel. But I'm also allowed to stop being an option you pick up and play with only when you're lonely or bored." She was fully sobbing now, a deep, ugly cry that shook her entire body. "I love you," she choked out. The words, which would have melted my heart a month ago, meant absolutely nothing to me now. They felt hollow, like a script she was reading from. "Maybe you do," I said softly. "But you don't respect me. And I cannot build a life with someone who makes me feel like my love is an inconvenience. Like loving you is a flaw I should apologize for. Please," she begged, her fingers desperately grabbing the fabric of my shirt. "Can we just come inside and talk about this? Really talk? We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll communicate more. I swear I'll make you a priority." I looked down at her hands clutching my shirt, then back up to her tear-streaked face. "You'll do those things for a few weeks. Maybe a month, tops. Just until the panic wears off and you're comfortable again. Until you know I'm safely trapped and not going anywhere. And then We'll be right back here, with me staring at a gray checkmark wondering why you haven't texted me back, and you getting annoyed that I dared to notice. She desperately grabbed for my hand. I didn't pull away aggressively, but I didn't hold her hand in return. I just let my hand rest there, completely limp and lifeless in her grip. "I'm sorry," she wept, dropping her head against my chest. "I'm so sorry. I was selfish. I was taking you for granted. I see it now." "I know you do," I said, gently but firmly prying her fingers off my hand and taking a deliberate step back into my apartment. "And I'm sorry too. I'm sorry it took me this long to realize that I deserve infinitely better than someone who makes me feel bad for caring about them." "Wait, please." She reached out one last time as I began to shut the door. "Take care of yourself, Chloe. I genuinely mean that. Goodbye." I closed the door softly, but firmly, until I heard the deadbolt click into place. I stood in the hallway for a long moment. I could hear her standing on the other side of the wood, sniffling, crying, waiting for me to change my mind and open the door again. I didn't move, her crying slowly fading away into the distance until the building was silent once again. I walked back into my kitchen. My carbonara was completely cold. I scraped it into the trash can, washed the plate, and poured myself another glass of wine. I put on some upbeat jazz music, sat on my couch, and felt an overwhelming, profound sense of peace. Update, 2 months later. It's been a little over 2 months since Chloe showed up crying at my door, and life has moved on in ways I couldn't have predicted. My brother Marcus called me a few weeks ago with some gossip. He told me that Chloe had officially started dating someone new, some guy she met at her boutique gym barely a month after our final conversation at my door. When Marcus told me, he sounded hesitant, like he was expecting me to break down. But I felt absolutely nothing hearing that news. I didn't feel a pang of jealousy. I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel vindicated. It simply confirmed exactly what I had realized during my 4 weeks of silence. I wasn't the problem in the relationship. I was just a convenient placeholder, a reliable safety net, until something shinier and more exciting came along to occupy her time. I actually ran into her once, briefly, at a mutual friend's birthday party at a crowded bar in Wicker Park. I saw her spot me from across the room. She immediately straightened up and started walking toward me, looking like she wanted to talk. Before she could close the distance, I politely turned to the person I was chatting with, excused myself to get another drink, and smoothly relocated to the complete opposite side of the venue. I spent the rest of the night laughing with my friends and ignoring her side of the room. She didn't try to approach me again, and I noticed she ended up leaving the party early. Professionally, things have never been better. The massive security overhaul project I buried myself in during those initial weeks of silence turned out to be one of my consulting firm's biggest success stories of the year. The client was absolutely thrilled with the 0-day vulnerabilities I patched. Because of that project, my boss pulled me into his office last week and officially promoted me to senior cybersecurity consultant. It came with a massive promotion and a significant raise, bumping my salary from $115,000 to $145,000 a year. The financial security is great, but the validation of my hard work feels even better. My focus has never been sharper. Personally, I'm doing great. I've been on a few casual dates, nothing serious yet, but I'm absolutely not rushing into anything. I'm taking this time to learn what I actually want in a partner, instead of just blindly accepting whatever woman wants me back. I'm learning what my firm boundaries are, and more importantly, I'm learning how to enforce them immediately without feeling a shred of guilt. My phone is no longer a source of crippling anxiety. I don't stare at it waiting for a specific name to pop up. I check it when I feel like it. I respond when I have something meaningful to say. I've learned that silence isn't always a punishment or a display of anger. Sometimes, silence is just peace. Sometimes, it's the ultimate form of self-preservation. Last week, late on a Sunday night, my phone buzzed. It was a massive, multi-paragraph text from Chloe. I didn't read the whole thing, but from the preview, it was a long, winding apology, an explanation about how her new relationship wasn't working out, and a desperate request to meet up for coffee and talk when I'm ready. I read the first few sentences, felt a brief flicker of pity for her, and then I archived the message without responding. I didn't even block her. Archiving it felt more final. Some conversations simply don't need to happen. Some apologies come far too late to mean anything. Some people only realize the value of what they had when they are entirely stripped of the ability to have it anymore. And honestly, I have never slept better in my entire life. My apartment feels like my sanctuary again. My time feels entirely like my own. My life feels like mine. I don't hate Chloe. I don't wish her any ill will, and I hope she eventually figures out whatever is missing inside of her. I just wish I had respected myself enough to walk away from her much sooner. But, as they say, better late than never. Top comments. User it. The craziest part of this entire story isn't even the fact that she ignored you for weeks. It's the sheer audacity to get furious at you for doing exactly what she commanded you to do. I'll talk to you when I feel like it is a direct order to back off. You backed off. And then she plays the victim because her ego couldn't handle the fact that your world didn't stop spinning the second she walked out the door. The absolute narcissist. My girlfriend scoffed. Stop being so needy. I'll talk to you whenever I feel like it while out partying with her friends. I simply replied, as you wish, muted her entirely, and spent the next 4 weeks completely ignoring her existence until she showed up at my door, sobbing, begging for the attention she had so carelessly thrown away. I am a 29-year-old guy working as a cybersecurity analyst in Chicago, and up until about a month ago, I genuinely believed I was in the healthiest, most secure relationship of my entire life. My girlfriend, who I'll call Chloe, 28 female, and I had been together for exactly 2.5 years. We didn't live together. She had a beautiful loft in the West Loop, and I rented a modest apartment up in Lincoln Park, but our lives were deeply intertwined. We texted constantly, and it never felt forced. It was just our rhythm. I'd wake up to a good morning message, we'd do quick check-ins during our lunch breaks, and we always ended the day with a good night call, even if it was just for 5 minutes to hear each other's voices. It felt normal. It felt incredibly right. We were planning a future together,